Welcome to IRC New Road Farm. And this is West Sacramento. Our office is located in Sacramento. IRC, International Rescue Committee, was started at the request of Albert Einstein. During that period, you know the history, you are turning the page in your brain, I know. But this is purely humanitarian, non-profit organization working in US as a resettlement agency.
The three big parts of this project are we have to prep the area where the ASP system is going to go. So we'll have one person leading that part of the project. Probably will be Janelle and anybody else that really feels like they're good at leveling and shoveling and grading a boxed square foot area. The second team is the math team. So if you really feel that you've got a good understanding of aerodynamics, of calculus, I'm getting a lot of shaking heads, but this team, I just want to totally be aware, sometimes this team needs to be a smaller team, right? That too many minds, too many cooks, that can make it very confusing. So even 3 dedicated people that feel that they can read a chapter and find the math answer. So part of today is learning, right? So even if you don't think you're a mathematician, we can teach this to you. The third team will be the manifold team. And this is probably about 20 bodies too, as well. And this is following the design here and putting the parts together. It will involve sawing, drilling, measuring, and like putting erectoset parts together. Oh, gluing, PVC. So there's a lot of little jobs and little teams that could exist on this full manifold team. So the math game is kind of like a game of whack-a-mole with an ASP system. When you get into aerodynamic science, it really depends on the velocity that air can move on how far it has to go, so how big your manifold is, how many of the pipings, how big the pipe itself is, but also what you put on top of that pipe. So the weight of your finished compost piles, or these little skinny piles, only 2 cubic yards, weigh a lot less than putting it over 2 pipes and having a trapezoidal shaped windrow as very heavy. So then it depends on the power of the fan, of being able to blow air on something that is little, lighter piles or one big pile. So we've kind of made some of the choices of the manifold design that will give you and are in your math homework already as the constants. What we're going to be solving for today is the size of the holes that we're going to drill in the pipes, because there's one answer that has not been found out yet, and that's if we want to cover the piles with a Gore-Tex or a tarp or anything, or a biofiltration system over it after we build the windrows, because that also affects pressure. There are a lot of variables, and if we do just for general interest, the variables in an aerated static pile system are going to be the choice of your piping. So a lot of PVC pipe can't handle temperatures above 140 degrees, but we know we're trying to maintain 131, and sometimes if we're not turning it, it can get up to 160, so you don't want to melt the piping. So that's a big starter, is what PVC pipe to get. So that Schedule 40 can handle the temperature. The next thing that is probably the biggest determinant is the size of your blower. Right? So the static pressure in the velocity of the air moving through the system is very determinant at different phases of the composting process. So during thermophilic, when those microbes need a lot of oxygen, you want to have a lot more air going through it. But when it's maturing and it's on like the 3rd bay, you can use the valves and the ducting system to actually have that be a slower amount of velocity of air, so it's just helping it cure and really finish off well. But you also can get 2 piles happening at once, one in a thermophilic moment and the other in maturation moment. And so for that, I actually recommend getting a blower that has multiple speeds on it. So don't get sucked into the bouncy house cheap ones. They actually are too strong, believe it or not. It's too much oxygen on a lot of these smaller scale systems. If you're building mid-scale, I would consider it, but it still doesn't have 2 speeds. So you want to be able to slow it down and speed it up depending on where you are in the composting process. And then, yeah.
How do you determine what is a large, small, or medium-sized pile
That's
system?
great. So it's the amount of feedstock material that you're trying to have a throughput capacity for. So in our book, there is real no like actual definition of small scale for the amount of throughput capacity. It's more like 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional size. But for us, that's like 1,000 pounds or less a week of food material. Not all material, but just food is small. If you're doing 2,000 pounds a week picking up from farmers markets, you're medium. If you're doing over 2,000 pounds a week, you probably have multiple systems going on and a lot of space too. So site capacity is the biggest determinant here on small, medium, or large, not the system. Because you can build the system to take any throughput. But you need to decide right now, how many families are you allowing to drop off here, or how much on an average basis at a drop off at farmers markets are you picking up, or what is your total throughput capacity that you could have. The ASP system we're building today is for 1,000 pounds a week. At an average household of 13 pounds per week of food material diverted from to the community gardens, that's about 150 households is 1,000 pounds a week. Which is, food waste is heavy. Air is coming down. What is below in this hole is a leche pea trap catchment. It's just like what you see on a toilet or on the bottom of your sink. So this accounts for gases and for liquids. And when liquids come into play, it is because condensation is happening inside the pipes with the different temperatures of heat on the outside and possibly cooler air on the inside, or it depends on positive, negative aeration, which we can talk about more tomorrow. But why we've graded it down is that any of that condensation, it flows backwards and it falls down the P-traps. But the P-trap is 2 inches smaller than this, so the air won't go down. The air is forced to go into the system. So the P-trap helps with leche, so you don't end up with a mud pile every time it rains that smells really bad. And then the air has 3 choices. It can go through door number 1. It can go through doors number 2 and 1, and it can go through 1, 2, and 3. It could, depending on where you decide to start building your piles and systems, you get a lot of control. The reason that we don't use ball valves is because you only have an on and an off position. But the CFM fan and the airflow velocity, you can control with opening your gate a little bit, opening it all the way, opening it 3/4, quarters. So during maturation, you get a lot of control by using knife valves. These are what these are called. So after it goes through, the air goes through a knife valve, it comes out to these pipes that are end capped. You have systems, what you'll read in James Masweeney's book, that close off the ends, so it's just continually circling air. There's a lot more math behind that, which can be added to this system, which is why we did flexible end caps and didn't glue on the regular end caps, so that later, if we find out we want to add that, we can. It's also why we used the flexible caps and didn't glue in this area, so we can change the width of these poles if we ever needed to. And it's also why we didn't put PVC glue on here, because we just don't know how, if we like these specific valves. So it's measure twice, cut once, but only glue if you love your system. is that. And so today what we're going to do is go on the middle one, and we're going to build the windrow pile just right over the top of this. The pipes are only aerated in a certain section of the pipe, not the whole length. And that's so that when air comes out of this pile, it's always equidistant to an edge. If you perforated all the way here and your pile came here, this little section of that parabola is going to get really dry and not be wet enough to actually do the job. So the perforations are little holes that are on the bottom, well, like 4 and 8 o'clock. And the reason we didn't do them on the top is the water and the leachate issue, and any of your small bits of compost getting in and clogging your holes. So we're going to turn the system on, and then you can put your hands down, you can play with the valves, you can feel how the pressure changes.